Imagine that somehow your only wish ends up coming to life in the most unexpected way, in circumstances you might not believe. As our main protagonist ends up meeting someone at the edge of despair, a beautiful manga begins. The manga starts and our main protagonist, Yuki, lets out a gentle wish and mutters about how he would finally like to have a girlfriend for himself. All his life, he has never been interested in love or the problems that come with it, and has focused solely on working hard in everything to maintain the life he has been living. When he was in middle school, his father passed away, and since then, he has made his own way by doing odd jobs here and there. Now he is a top student in his class, and that is how he got scholarships and many financial reliefs for himself. Frankly, this is how he has been surviving, and getting a girlfriend would have just hindered him. As he somewhat reflected on how he could at least be a normal person for once in his life, his puberty finally reached its peak, and the urge to get a girlfriend bothered him more than anything. Even in his class, he started to remind himself to just muster the courage and ask out any girl that he liked, but he also reminded himself to focus on his studies. One day, as he was going back home, it was raining like never before, and the loud noise of rain almost made it difficult to hear anything else. Now he was muttering some historic name of some history subject, and in between the phrases, his puberty would hinder his enlightenment, and he would casually slip up and spew about how he was dying to have a girlfriend. As he fought with these thoughts, he was sure that this year he could kiss his scholarships goodbye and work 9 to 5 at some labor sites. As he noticed something, he looked over at an abandoned site, and there he ended up seeing something unimaginable. There was someone on the roof, all alone in the deafening rain. He was sure that the intentions of that person were questionable, and immediately, without any hesitation, he dashed to the top and quietly sneaked onto the roof. Generally, at times like these, moving fast and making a commotion would scare the person on the other side. He quietly opened the door, and it was just as he expected. Someone had just made a painful and hopeless decision. As he was about to act, the girl did the unthinkable. As he dashed, he immediately hugged the girl tight and exclaimed at the top of his lungs. He tightened his arm around her waist to make sure that there were no mistakes in this critical state. He leveraged the fence and pulled her with everything that he had. As the girl yelled at him to release her, he reminded her that any normal human in this situation would hold the unfortunate person so hard that they would surely rethink everything. As they both slammed down onto the ground, the girl immediately started to get up. From one look at her, she had a prestigious uniform and surely belonged from a well-off family, and somehow she was still doing something unexplainable. As she wobbled and tried to approach that place one more time, he grabbed her arm, and as she spun around, he saw a beautiful person crying with thick tears, and from one look at her, we could confirm that the world had pushed her to the point of no return, and the pain that she carried must be too great to let go. Now Yuki was surprised to see such a wonderful girl doing something like this. In an instant, his male hormones awakened, and he reflected on how she was just a beauty. He asked her about the things she was doing, and for a minute she just went mute, and he knew just what he had to do. He was going to call her parents or some authorities, and the girl finally let out a gentle and weak voice, telling him not to contact her family no matter what. Now everything was moving quickly, and he told her to get warm immediately or she would definitely get a cold. He covered her from the rain, and with a joking tone, he asked her if she would like to visit his place since it was much closer than the school or any authority. And to his surprise, the girl nodded her head. Back at his home, he was sure that this girl must be used to these types of things, and maybe she could be a fraudster or something, and from the side, she came up and thanked him for letting her use his shower. Now everything that she was doing was full of grace, and he invited her to sit down. As she sat herself, there was pin-drop silence, and not only that, they both had an awkward and uncomfortable environment around them. He introduced himself, and with a weak voice she muttered out her name as well. As he remembered the things that Shiro was about to do, he asked her if that was something that she considered with everything she had, and without reply, she lowered her head, and he comforted her not to say anything if that was the case. As he said this, he ended up seeing a painful sight that he never thought would have been possible. From her uniform to every action, It was clear that she was well brought up and there was no financial problem or anything like that, but as he saw the heavy bruises on her body, there was something very serious going on. She herself let out a hopeless voice and let him know that she just had no purpose and didn't consider being around pleasant, or a blessing. Now Yuki had never heard these words from someone's mouth, and deep down, he was sure that she would definitely go somewhere else and try to do the same thing once more. He started to list all the things that he could try and prevent her from falling deeper into the abyss, and with a confident voice, he told her to be his girlfriend. Now she looked at him like looking at an insect. He himself knew that something like this wasn't appropriate whatsoever. As he jumped and started to act like a kid, he explained to her about the reason behind his stupid request. He added, since she didn't have anything to rely on or to carry on with, he lets her know that this could become a reason for her to just continue on with life for some time. Now he tried his very best to not sound like a pervert or a creepy person. His hormones definitely got the best of him. He actually started to act like a little kid, and as she looked at him, he lets her know that he would like her to be with him and not think about doing the painful thing that she was about to do. He additionally added that if she found this uncomfortable, she could surely leave once the rain was over. Now Shiro, on the other hand, started to tear up, and with a cheerful and hopeful smile, she let him know that she would become his girlfriend if that was what he wanted. Now he was totally in disbelief. He was too stunned to even understand her words. She let him know that from his words and actions she somewhat understood that he was a nice person, and in the first place, he confessed to her in a genuine way. As he smiled himself, he asked her to never hesitate for a minute and make sure to ask him for anything that would bother her. As she lowered her head, she called out to him and told him that she would like to stay here for some time and not return home. As he heard this, his world and dating life were moving faster than anything. It was so fast that he questioned if the next part of the relationship would happen in the next few hours. With a serious tone, he let her know that he was fine with her staying here for some time, and immediately she got down to her knees and thanked him. But as his jokes disappeared, he was worried about the things that were going on inside her head, and Shiro told him to take care of her. As he blushed for a minute, she let out a dangerous smile and called him her boyfriend. And he also bowed to her and called her his flower for some reason. The next day, the same old thought approached him, and this time, he was praising himself for scoring a home run. He couldn't believe that an angelic beauty was staying at his place, and deep down he wanted to dance. Now our poor Yuki had no idea what to do next and wondered if there was some ritual that he should be doing. He decided to ask the best person he knew, and he asked his best friend. She first of all mocked him and seriously thought about his question. With a cold voice, she let him know that intercourse is the first thing that couples would do, and he blocked her fast mouth and let her know that there are other things that humans can focus on. She asked him if he had a girlfriend or something, and maybe that was why he had been asking these questions, and he let out a big smirk and let her know that it was something like that. Now, as she mocked him one more time, she explained to him about the traditional roadmap of dating. If he had already gotten a girlfriend, the next logical step would be to hold hands and then prepare meals for each other. Now hearing this, Yuki learned about the sacred technique to progress. After school, he rushed back home, and was sure that his friend was not lying about the next step. He decided to just open the door, and as he opened it like a madman, Shiro was standing right near the entrance, and had slight blushes all over her face. As she couldn't make eye contact with him, she was there to greet her new boyfriend. Now her kind and gentle voice immediately made him forget everything. And as she explained about how she waited for him to appear, she also apologized for making him confused with her little actions. With a weak voice, she held out her hand and looked at it for a minute and told Yuki to hold her hand. It seemed like Shiro heard the ritual that he was going on about, and he asked if it was really okay for him to hold her hand. As he was about to do this, he noticed something strange. The moment he was about to touch her, she started to tremble aggressively. As he realized how selfish he must have been, he saw Shiro facing the other way and enduring all the fear that she had. He looked at his hand and reflected on how his request was solely for his own benefit and pleasure. He thanked her and told her about how she was still afraid of being touched. As he said this, she looked at him like her secret was exposed, and he explained about how her will to do this was enough for him. As she exclaimed about how this was something that he wanted, he shook her off, and in the next instant, poor Shiro ended up crying. She began to apologize again and again, and deep down, she was still afraid of people touching her. She cried out that she knew that he was a kind person, but still she was too scared for her life. He lets her know in a firm and confident voice that in a relationship, there's no need to move at a different pace. He lets her know that they can move at a slower pace and try everything when the time is right. As Shiro smiled slightly despite her teary face, with a loud voice he exclaimed and told her that he would surely want to hug her someday and told her to start practicing with a pillow, and this made her smile. He was sure that he was done for the day, and seeing her smile was more than enough for him to push forward. Now, one of his requests was turned down, so he immediately switched to another one and asked if she could cook him a delicious lunch box for his school. She replied to him with a smiling face and told him that she could cook a little, and would surely make him something delicious for breakfast and lunch as well. Just hearing this, he was a happy man once again and couldn't hold back the tears. That day he went to sleep, and as soon as his alarm clock hit the 6 a.m. mark, he slapped that bad boy and got up a happy man, ready to enjoy his girlfriend's homemade food. As he glanced to the side, he saw Shiro sleeping. He wanted to eat her homemade food and wasn't sure if this would be appropriate to wake her. He also reflected on how she wouldn't take the bed and wanted him to sleep like he would normally do. As he noticed something, he really wanted to see her innocent face while sleeping, and as he got up to check it, she ended up changing sides, and he was ready to witness this scene, but he ended up seeing a big bruise on her forehead. Earlier we saw bruises on her body, but on her head as well, there was severe bruising. As she started to mutter something, tears began to flow from her eyes, and even her dreams, nightmares, and memories of her life haunted her. She kept telling someone to forgive her, and he covered her with a blanket. As he got ready, he decided to leave for school without lunch. At school, he continued his small routine, and from the side, Otani greeted him. As she sat down, she asked him if his operation went well or if it just backfired on him. He replied to her, and shared how these things could take time, and she replied and told him how he was a bore. Now someone slid open the classroom door with so much force that it literally scared Yuki, and Fuji entered the classroom with charm and charisma, and at the top of his lungs, he called out to Otani. Now Fuji is a baseball ace and head over heels for Otani, who hates him and just ignores him harder than anyone. He confessed his feelings again, and Otani sent him off again with cruel words. As Yuki requested him to think of someone else, and confess his feeling to them, Fuji replied and added how the person in love would always think about their beloved, and other people don't matter to them. Now Yuki himself reflected on this, and added how he was thinking of Shiro himself, and would never think of anyone else. As he blushed, Fuji noticed this and asked him if he had finally broken the virtue of being single, and he replied to them about it being all true and real. Now he ended up making a troubled face for some reason, and he reflected how he was sure that Yuki would not date until he had gotten old enough to support a family or something. He patted his shoulder and told him to cherish his youth. He additionally told him to be good to his girlfriend, and as his ears marinated these words, his brain couldn't believe that he actually had a girlfriend. After school, he returned home, and Shiro was all nervous and frustrated for some reason. He was beyond happy to see that someone was waiting for him so patiently, and even would reply to his greeting. Now Shiro lowered her head and started to tremble. She also apologized to him for not cooking him the food he told her to do, and he comforted her about how he didn't mind the fact that he went to school all hungry. He told her to prepare the food whenever she had time and energy to do so. As Shiro had already prepared a table, Yuki was blown away by the food that she prepared. He was so glad for not being single anymore, and as he took a bite, the taste just sent him off to the moon. He complimented her cooking, and Shiro just let out a big, bright smile. After eating his fill, he asked her if she could get him a second helping, and as he handed her the bowl, she unintentionally touched his finger, and cold shivers ran down her spine. He apologized and offered to take it himself, and in the next second, she grabbed his hand. As she even closed her eyes to do this, it was clear that this took a lot of courage from her. He called out her name, and she replied to him, and shared how she was not that afraid. She started to add about the things that she had been experiencing, and how the little things that he had been doing were filling her with some hope. With a beautiful smile, she requested him to stay like this for a minute, and finally, we witnessed that Shiro had mustered the courage to break free from one of her chains. As she finally learned to trust someone once again, the next day, he glared outside the window and was sure that his girlfriend was the best. Now finally, he had a wonderful handmade lunch made by Shiro, and he flexed that in front of Otani. Now as she praised it as well, Yuki began to describe the details of the lunch, and she just couldn't handle it. He asked her about how he would actually like to gift her something and asked if she knew something that a girl would like. She showed him a manga and let him follow the guide there. Now on one of the panels, there was a girl smiling, and immediately he imagined Shiro holding the gift, and as he jumped from imagining her cute face, he couldn't hold back anymore and was sure that he would gift her something for sure. At home, he asked her with much courage, and she repeated his words, and he explained how he appreciated everything that she did for him and added how he would gift her anything from a smartphone to clothes. Now he was sure that she would smile brightly, but a grim atmosphere surrounded them in the next instant. And she replied and told him that she would not want anything, and in the first place, she didn't deserve anything. She shared how Yuki was already paying for the food and everything, and he interrupted her and reminded her that everything was fine and that he had a decent amount of money saved up for future use. However, in the next instant she told him that for someone like her, there should be nothing. He heard this, and again, his plan to move things forward failed, and he put on a sad face. Shiro grabbed his hand and let him know that she was already happy and satisfied to hear his compliments about her food. As her smile healed him, both couldn't help but smile at each other. Shiro had finally learned to reach out her hand on her own, and she spun around and exclaimed how she would prepare food for them, and she ended up making a delicious soft egg rice for him. As he ate, he showered her with praises, but her words kept circling around his head. He questioned why she would say that, and someone with good looks, habits, and skills, surely there could be some misunderstanding or something. As he reflected on this, she smiled at him and muttered to himself about how he wanted to make her the happiest. He still couldn't stop thinking about getting her a smartphone. He looked around to see if something was to his liking, and he reminded himself that even if he liked it and wanted to buy it, he would need to ask for his parents' help. He also couldn't help but wonder if her parents were trying to find her as well, and reflected on how it has been a week and there has been no sign of action from her parents' side. While walking, he ended up seeing something that caught his attention. He got back home and in the next instant, he explained to her about the wonders of a gaming console. As it looked like he bought a PS5, he smiled while unboxing it, and he handed a controller to her. Now it was clear that she had no idea about this, and he explained on how two players can play with each other, and asked if she would like to play with him. As she smiled, she began to inspect the controller, and became a timid rabbit for a minute. As they began their quest, after a few hours he turned off the console, and we learned that Shiro was a complete newbie in the world of games. She cried out on how she failed at every stage, and he asked her if she enjoyed it. Now she let out a happy expression and reflected on how she must have been a nuisance, but despite that she enjoyed the game and stated so. He instructed her to practice while he was not at home, and she ended up becoming his disciple. Now he bought this to help with boredom, and was glad that she somewhat enjoyed this. As she began to inspect it once more, he left her and headed for bed. The next day, he told his experience to Otani, and as always, she was not impressed at all. She added how he must have bought it specially for her, and he blushed again and replied about how it must have been helpful. Now Otani herself added how it was very weird about how it has been a week and there have been no calls from her parents whatsoever. Additionally, she didn't have a smartphone and never even played any games. She herself questioned if she lived in severe isolation or something worse, and despite their happy moment, he could never shake off the first meeting with her and the things she was doing. There were also bruises that covered her body. She reminded him that she had someone she could contact from her school, and she could help them dig into her past or something, and he refused and added how it was not right, and she herself didn't talk about herself. As he remembered her smiling face, he told her that she would definitely tell everything to him when the time was right. She broke the ice and reminded him on how he didn't know how to interact and intervene with strangers. She added that there are some people who are unknowingly waiting for someone to intervene in their lives, and most of them are girls. He asked her about this vague statement, and she shook him off and shared about how there are many people who have something that they want to share but can't find the right words. Now, as she said this, it felt like she herself had something to say but buried it deep, and he kept wondering what she meant by that. After school, he went to his shift, and as he returned, he was amazed about how she had adjusted to her new lifestyle. Now he was happy to have her, and reflected on how there was a rather quick development. But deep down he himself wanted to know more about her. As he got closer to his apartment, he started to imagine her angelic voice and her way of greeting him. He imagined it over and over, and once he opened the door, he noticed that she wasn't there. He went to the kitchen area but didn't see her, and there, Shiro was lying right near a knife, and as she lay there, his whole perspective changed for a second. He immediately rushed over to check on her, and prayed that this all be nothing serious and life-threatening. As he exclaimed, she let out a cute snooze. As she began to snooze over and over again, she had ended up sleeping on the floor while cutting some vegetables. He was so glad to realize that things were not serious, and things for her have been pretty normal, and she hasn't been trying to do anything dangerous. As he moved her to a bed, he couldn't hold back his worries for her. Now she didn't wake up despite sleeping for more than 12 hours. He was sure that she must have been gaming a little too hard, and it turned out that Shiro had taken her first step into becoming a cultured gamer. As he laughed at how she had a long journey ahead, after some time, she got up and remembered how she fell asleep on the floor. This was just an uncommon thing that surely wasn't something serious. But as her eyes widened, it seemed like for her this was something more like a serious crime. She began to look for him. As she found him near the bathroom, he greeted her and muttered how he couldn't take her uniform off and had to leave her there. She interrupted him and lowered her head down and began apologizing. He replied how she has been going a little hard and was behind on her sleep, and her eyes widened to hear this. With a cracking and absolutely terrified voice, she explained to him about how while he was working and studying hard, she was enjoying herself and played games and had fun. She began to apologize over and over. She lowered her head even more and began to tremble, like the next thing that would happen to her would leave her bruised and hurting for weeks. He sat down and let out a big bright smile and told her how she should enjoy playing games. She saw his smiling face, and he began to wash away all her fear and anxiety. Each of his words were said in a gentle voice, and he reassured her about how it was just normal to enjoy games over sleep. Now his cheerfulness confused her, and she asked if he was not mad at her. He replied that he was not mad, and this was not something to be mad over in the first place. As she began to tear up, he smiled at her one more time and shared about how it made him happy to see Shiro happy. Now these words were something that she wanted to hear so badly, and in the next second, she ended up crying. As tears rolled from her cheek, she cried like a little child, who just learned that she wouldn't be beaten to a pulp for being happy for a few hours. He petted her head over and over again, and he calmed her down and gently muttered to her that they should prepare to play one more time. He added that he had no idea what her painful past and story was, but now he was determined to protect her and get closer to her. The next day, he went on and on about his amazing dating life, and like always, Otani was not interested at all. She asked him if he was taking care of her like a normal girl should take care of herself, and asked if he was letting her buy specific shampoo and everything. But from his glare, it was clear that he was, in fact, hopeless. Otani exclaimed about how poor Shiro must have been holding back, and he reflected on how she must be satisfied. Now, he was about to say something, and she crushed him by adding how he has never pleasured himself and is the strangest human. She explained to him how girls have different necessities that need to be looked after. They can't just live like a man. He was completely clueless, and she added on how there needs to be skin care that helps their skin, and there are some other important things. Now, since he was hopeless, he replied how most of his life he just wandered around and did whatever he pleased. And Otani began to leave, and he called to her from the back. He asked her to visit them once and handle everything about the things that she just added. She spun around and replied about how she would take 6 months of lunch from him for this favor. He began to bargain, and after settling for 2 months of lunch, Otani decided to take care of her tomorrow. After school, he informed her about his friend and added how she would visit them. As she asked about what type of girl she was, he wondered if she was nervous or something, and he began to explain every single detail about her. As he didn't leave anything behind, she threw her head to the side, and he asked her if she was angry. But as he realized what had happened, Shiro on the other hand was angry at him, and she glares at him with a pissed expression, and she calls him stupid. Shiro was jealous, since he was talking over and over about Otani. He blushed himself and couldn't believe that a beautiful girl would be jealous, and he faced the other way as well. As she asked if he was laughing, he replied and told her how he was happy to have someone be jealous for him. Now she was beyond angry, and she ended up tickling him near his arm, and immediately he jolted from it, and Shiro had just found out about his weakness. As she let out a teasing and beautiful smile, he on the other hand was blown away by her once more, and she repeated the ticklish things again. The next day, Otani was supposed to come over, and when she did, she couldn't believe the sight in front of her. As she muttered how this was not possible, Yuki, on the other hand, wondered if she knew Shiro or something, and in the next second, she exclaimed about how beautiful of a person Shiro was. She immediately greeted the great angelic Shiro, and she offered her hand to her and offered her to become her friend. Now for a second, she just looked at it, and then she greeted her herself, and this time she didn't hesitate like she did with Yuki, and on the other hand, he was a bit jealous of this. She noticed him and asked if there was anything wrong, and he wondered how quickly women can become friends with just a few words. Shiro broke the ice and asked him if he was feeling jealous. Now from his reaction, it was clear that he felt jealous, and she lets out a giggle. Otani told them to move on already, and as they sat around the table, Yuki was not able to stop, and he kept on going on and on about how his girlfriend was just the best human ever. He was so into it that Otani reminded him to relax since his girlfriend was just freaking out herself. As she swore at him, she said it in such a way that it had no damage whatsoever. As Otani brought out snacks for their conversation, Yuki added how this was the reason why she couldn't lose weight, and she threw a liver shot at him. As Shiro checked the package of the snack, Otani wanted her to try the snacks. As she opened the bag and laid them all out on the table, she tried one chip, and immediately a big smile appeared on her face, and she exclaimed how good they were. As he left them for some time, he got back to see that they were already on good terms and even somewhat friends. As they asked why he took so long, he complained about the newspaper salesman. Now Otani was so close to her already that she even began to pat her head, and he just couldn't believe his eyes. Their friendship definitely would help Shiro out, and as he was somewhat glad to see this, Otani told them to get ready to shop at the nearby shopping mall. Now Shiro asked them if they were doing this for her, and at first, both tried to convince her. Otani wanted her to buy a few outfits for herself, and since she never bought anything of value and just kept living with the same tracksuit and school uniform. On the other hand, she refused them at first but then agreed. As she told them how excited she was, deep down there was something else going on. They got ready to move, and as they approached the main door, both Yuki and Otani were ahead of her, and for some reason, Shiro just stopped near the entrance, and as Yuki noticed this, he spun around to see that Shiro was absolutely terrified to leave the house. He immediately realized that she was still paranoid, and he called out to her, and she smiled back at him and told him that she was fine, but from one look at her, it was clear that nothing was fine and she was barely holding on. As she was about to fall, Yuki grabbed onto her, and with a confident voice he told her that no matter what, he would be there to support her. He reminded her to take small steps and told her to sit. As she muttered in a weak voice, she sat down. When she entered his home for the first time, she never wanted to leave and face the harsh world ever again, and taking these steps were something that reminded her of the things that she suffered. As Ootani asked if she stayed at his place the whole time, Shiro apologized and told her how she couldn't leave, and the moment she stepped outside, all strength left her body. Ootani realized that she actually pushed a helpless person, and both agreed that it would be best to go for shopping another time. As she listened to this, she screamed at them and told them that she would go, and would not have them spoil her forever. As Yuki reminded her not to force herself, she glanced over to him, and told him that she would like to see his reaction of his girlfriend all dolled up. As he smiled, he grabbed onto her hand, and they began to walk outside together. As she trembled, Yuki helped her throughout the way. He became the strength that she was looking for. He didn't let her go and made sure that she would cross this difficult fear of hers today. As she stepped outside, he helped her overcome another fear of hers, which was beginning to haunt her. As she glanced over to him, he let out a bright smile, and Ootani from the back hugged her tight and let her know that she had finally done it. Seeing Yuki's smiling face, with a captivating expression, she let him know that she loved him. As part 1 ends, later in the story, their cheerful life comes to a stop, and Shiro ends up meeting the person who never in her life she should have seen. As they overcome their fears together, their scars and pains all disappeared through time and love.